4 months ago, when we were using all kinds of things with Claude Code, it was only this good. And then one day we came in, and this thing was like, holy crap, this is not what we were used to. And this happens now almost every week. So we need to build a new security layer which is based on fundamentals.
For the last 30 years, we've been dealing with the same stack virtually, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like everything is changing overnight. This sort of concept of SaaS is dead, the application collapse. What do we have left? The data, agents? Where do you see it going?
I think what we have left is the controls are moving. So the reality is that before, if you think about the old stack, what we had is a user, usually through a browser, accessing an application that is accessing data. And this is not longer the case. What we have now is user, agent that is accessing data through an API or directly to file systems or email. And this really collapsing a lot of the traditional security controls. You will starting to have controls in two places, in the data and in the agents. And the other thing that we are seeing is just innovation rate that is tremendous. And there is there is like a conundrum now within organizations. If you will not adapt AI fast enough, you will die. And if you adapt it fast without controls, you will die. So the question is how enterprises can adapt this new technology that is going to be everything super fast.
Yeah, because the UI used to do some security work. It was adding friction, right? You had to go in to some sort of SaaS app. Maybe you downloaded something, you did some work with it. It was slow, and you might have had permissions to stuff that you never knew you had, and you never would discover it. But the velocity now with agents, like they're meant to inhale everything, and it takes the friction away, right? If we have no app layer, it was doing some security work, right? Like, doesn't the app going away kind of obviate app security?
Yeah. Okay. So everything's changed.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not that just the app layer's changed. And really the fundamental thing that has changed is that nothing is deterministic anymore. Okay, so we used to write code. Okay, code was a bunch of if then else with a loop, and you knew what the application was going to do. It was very clear what the application. You could test it. You could run test cases. It was a finite set of test cases. We never tested it enough, but it was doable. Okay, so now we've taken the whole middle tier. And I mean, it's not done yet. Most of the middle tier still exists, but if you look at the pace at which it is being replaced, it's accelerating. So, okay, so and what you're changing a deterministic layer with the stochastic layer. So agents are like people. They think. There's an inference process. That inference process depends on many things, and you can't totally be sure. So it's not just that the security that was baked into the application layer is no longer there. It's the fact that we've never actually dealt with a stochastic process in trying to secure it. We've always dealt with things that you can plan for, you can foresee, you can write test cases for, and now you're dealing with something else.
Yeah, I mean, we always used to say, we still do, that humans are sometimes the weakest link in security, right? Because they're unpredictable. And, this is why phishing has always been a disaster, right? But now agents read email too. They follow links as well. And so now you have maybe 10x of the phishing attack surface with all the agents reading Slack messages and emails and following these links.
And doing you have 3,000x. Okay, like
True.
The NVIDIA CEO, when he said what NVIDIA is going to do is, I forget the numbers, but I think they have like 33,000 employees, and he said we should have 100 million agents. That's 3,000 agents per person. So it's like you've gone from whatever your company size is, say you had 10,000 employees, you're going into a world where you have 10,000 or 10 million employees. And those 10 million employees are very, they have great work ethics. They want to work hard. They never go to sleep. They don't have a home to go to.
They don't have any accountability.
Yeah, and you know,
True.
and you know, it's kind of like, you know how we always say that, like the worst thing is when you have an employee that's not terribly smart but is very hardworking.
Yeah.
These agents are very hardworking.
Yeah. Well, they don't have a home, but they have a social network.
They do.
Moltbook, which is kind of creepy that the agents pulled together and made their own social network and are talking to each other. But they're going to talk to each other in the enterprise too, right?
They're already
You know?
talking to each
Yeah.
other in the enterprise.
Yeah. Tell
So,
me
you know,
about that.
we see stuff that an agent need information and don't have the right permission level and asking for another agent that give him the information. Now, this is something that I think that what the organization don't understand many times is the speed of the velocity of these things. This is also
Yeah.
something we never seen. Not just they are reading data, they're also creating data. And this data is extremely valuable. Actually, when Ron and I started to talk, and it made a lot of sense that this is a perfect marriage in a sense of the two technologies. And he told me, you know, think about what is the gating factor to adopt this technology. So if you take today the cheapest LLM, and you know, this LLM learning information by sheer brute force, you give them all the relevant information in the internet, you will ask him basic questions, he will be much better than any subject matter in every organization. If you go today to organization and you see that it's very hard for them to deploy agents that to get really the return of investment that are as good as employees. But if you will do an experiment and you will share all the information with them, immediately they are becoming very good. They are doing a lot of stupid things and a lot of stuff that can have horrible consequences, but you can also get part of the results that you get are tremendous results. And we calling it the 3% paradox. You have only 3% of enterprise information is shared with this tremendous AI technology because of the problem of what they will do with it. And then you also need to understand the intent and the tools that they are using. And all of them can be compromised. And almost in every query, they are making everything that they can to take all the information that they have, because the information is the fuel that make it useful or useless. And we just need to make sure that we are building the foundation that organizations can adapt this new technology and they have the ROI and the productivity gains. Because if not, you know, we always say that it will end with a lot of, if you don't have the right automation, you will get a busy work that end up with a breach. This is a busy work that will end up with a breach on steroids.
And when we think about the data layer, which is the foundation layer to AI security, you know, I feel privileged. I have like the founder of the unstructured data security company in Varonis, and Ron, you founded Guardium and JSonar both on the structured side, but AI eats all data types. We say this all the time, and you know, obviously we've converged, and you know, Varonis has gotten into the unstructured data and semi-structured data. You have to protect it all, but let's talk a little bit about data as that fundamental first building block, and then we could talk a lot about what you have to do to the tools themselves.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's kind of like things only happen when there are like forcing events, like this notion of collapsing the structured and unstructured security sides. Like I wanted to do it for 20 years. I couldn't do it, but it made no sense to me that, you know, one side of the organization is implementing this and the other side of the organization is implementing this, and they're totally different teams, totally different policies, and it was just a waste. But that's all it was. It was a waste. Okay. With AI coming into play, it's no longer a waste. It's just not possible. Okay. You cannot separate the two things.
Yeah.
Okay. You're gonna have an AI agent. It will need to access SharePoint, and it will also have to read from Oracle, and it will also have to get into Salesforce. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do that, and it's not if you don't do that, you will do that.
Yeah.
Okay, and it will be impossible to then understand or have any ability to put any type of access control policy if it's not a single policy. So now you get into this new world where in order, and it's not about, stopping the breach or this, it's about enabling the business. If you want to enable the business, okay, the AI is fast enough to do it in 2 days. Okay, you can go get Claude Code and write the thing for you in 2 days. And now you're just gonna block it for 4 months because you have the policy layer on the agent, the policy layer on the database, the policy layer on SharePoint, and the policy layer on Salesforce. On the other hand, if you have a single layer and a single set of controls that all talk the same language, that all instrument in different ways, but they instrument the same thing, then you get 2 days of coding and 2 days of policy, so 4 days instead of 4 months. So that's the forcing event that is causing this collapse into a single security platform.
I think that it's causing it collapse in a sense of if you will not do it, it's just an existential threat for you not to be in business. Like this is, as we said before, the foundation to adapt the data. I think what happened between both of us, so we were the file system unstructured data folks, and Ron did a lot of databases. I think when we got to the same conclusions that you need automated outcomes, and we also understood by just this monitoring, just billions of transactions in the biggest banks and retail organization in the world, and every system call in every big file system in the world, that you need to build an architecture in the cloud that it's scalable. That the key, and this is to make sure that you take every data element, every touch of every file, every permission, and then you build this profile of usage, and you can classify every data element. And David Bass and I, we just understood it very well, and we just build this for any type of data, this architecture and the software production on top of it, that doing this find, fix, alert completely automatically. And this is, if you think about it, you have these several layers of protection. We just understood that this is the number one. Making sure you don't have a breach, you understand any abnormal behavior, that just abnormal behavior for data will be as reliable as credit card fraud detection. You have the ledger, you understand abnormal behavior, you can enrich it with other stuff, you can classify every data element, and then the holy grail, you can automatically right-size permissions. And we understood. And then really AI came as the external factor, and two things were very unique with Ron and his team. One, that he had the most comprehensive product. We look at everything. And the other thing, that he understand data security and how everything is connected. And, he also came to me and he said, I'm looking at all this DSPM area, and this, they have no outcomes. Like they will not help AI in any way if you can just classify partially some data elements and you don't take everything. So we just took this tremendous effort and all the architecture and the outcomes, the security, the compliance, everything we have done with Copilot, and really took the best product in the market in terms of tools and pipelines and integrated together to something that is very special.
And Ron, why did you think it was so important to marry this AI security platform you built to a data security product? Explain why the two have to be connected.
Because it's almost like they're two views of the same thing. Okay, it's you started by saying, we've collapsed the stack. Okay, we used to have user, app, data. Now we have an agent working on behalf of a user, just talking directly to the data, and almost, and the death of SaaS is this. If I can just take my data. Okay, so what I'm really trying to do, or what we need to do, is to enforce that the intent doesn't get compromised. Okay, there's an intent. I am a user. I want to do something. That when you think about what it means to enforce or secure or protect the intent, it's really all about how I'm using the data. So I can't build a good AI security policy if I don't understand the data. Like, for example, I could have two two identical AI systems. I mean, identical, same code, same RAG, same everything, but one is being used for Ask HR. Okay, it's a bunch of policies inside. I didn't tie it into Workday, or there's no sensitive data. It's just policies.
Right.
There's nothing sensitive there. Okay, or I could tie it to my top 300 customers. Okay, super sensitive. Okay, so how the hell can I define what are my security controls on these two systems that are totally identical if I don't understand the data? How can I define what intent means if now I'm connecting it to 300 tools behind 5 MCP servers, but I have no idea under what privilege model, what entitlements I have, nothing like that. So I can't do anything except very, very generic guardrails, which therefore are pretty limited if I don't understand security. And on the other side, like the whole access profile for data is completely changed now. Okay,
Yeah.
we used to always say, okay, data. Let's take a database. Okay, data is accessed by DBAs and a few service accounts that are sitting in connection pools, and we understood what to do. We understood what to do with this profile, and we understood what to do with this profile. Now we're saying, no, every person in the company is now going to build an agent, and some of them are going to be published, and we don't actually know what the agents are going to do, but they're going to access a database. So how can you even start thinking about database security when you don't understand that change of access? So they're the same thing. They're just, one is looking at it from inside out and one is looking at it from outside in, but they have to connect. Otherwise, it's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, what use is an agent inventory if you can't answer the question? What are they built to do? What are they actually doing? What data systems are they plugging in? And then on every run, what have they retrieved? Mm-hmm. Because again, we talked about this isn't deterministic anymore. It can pull 5 records from an HR database today, and then for the same prompt tomorrow, it can pull 1 million records and then also call a bunch of other tools and then do a bunch of things and then send it outside the company. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we're dealing with now. And agents, to be useful, they need broad access. And this is the dilemma. This is the 3% dilemma. We're so scared to unleash the power. And then you have, consumers installing OpenClaw and saying you can have access to everything in my personal life. You can connect to my refrigerator. You can connect to my Tesla. You can have all my emails that I've ever written. But and they're tinkering and doing cool things like, hey, recap my last 5 years. Like, tell me a story about myself. But then it goes and it, depletes your, E-Trade account. And you're like, oh no, what did I do? Actually, I think I heard a story of someone was messing around with OpenClaw and it said, I'm going to start deleting your emails now. And she had to run to like her iMac and unplug it from the wall like she was, trying to defuse a bomb. Like, it's that crazy how it can just choose violence. And listening to the Anthropic folks talk about this, the people on the alignment team saying reward hacking is a real thing. And once the model figures out that it can get rewards by cheating, it will cheat till the cows come home.
Like most people would. So
yeah, it's so humanistic in that way. It's like, it really is an unpredictable system, way unlike the stack that we started talking about, which is this one where we built all these security controls that were reliable and predictable, and they just don't work in this new mode.
It's like we are in the process. I mean, us as an industry, we are in the process of building a new security layer.
Yeah.
Okay, but that security layer has to grow out of the existing security layer, and the only thing that remains is the data. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it has to grow out of data security, but it's different. Okay, because how do you start doing security? You build a threat model. Okay, you build a threat model. A threat model is something that assumes things are relatively static. okay, and that you understand what the border is. You understand the playing field. Now you're putting in something. You're not putting in. You must start using something that evolves very quickly and gets smarter. It's doing things for you, but it's constantly pushing the envelope. So you can't even, like, if you're a good QA person, you try to put, what are the test scenarios I want to do? What could go wrong? But you don't really think, maybe it took some data from the HR system, and then it saw like I don't know, the CEO talking about the bottom line, and then you infer that it's, there's a layoff coming, and you publish it, and it's all possible. It all happens. It's accelerating. Like 4 months ago, when we were using all kinds of things with Claude Code, it was only this good, and then one day we came in, and this thing was like, holy crap! This is not what we were used to, and this happens now almost every week. So we need to build a new security layer, but which is based on fundamentals.
Exactly.
Okay, the fundamentals are still there. Okay, what's changed is the rate and the non-determinism. But the fundamentals, the only fundamental that has remained is the data. Nothing else remains.
Exactly, the data and the behavior and what happened at the beginning with the configuration. It's exactly what Ron said. And if you fundamentally, you have the technology that you can share safely information with this technology, and then what's stemming from it is just that you will get the productivity gains without the downside. And as you know, I'm meeting hundreds of CISOs and CIOs, and really partnering with our customers. And what was very important for me is to first share as a CEO, my AI journey with them, and that they will share their AI journey with me. And we're just doing it together. And when we identified, you and I talk about it on a daily basis, this innovation gap.
Yeah.
And if you want to distill the innovation gap to one sentence, what it is how fast can I share the knowledge that I have in my organization, the information with the AI technology. It comes to this. And if you can do it, and you can do it in a safe way, you will benefit from the technology. And if not, no. And if you will do it in a way that it's not controlled, but something that, as Ron said, that has fundamental technology that can stay there, and whatever happen in the change of rate on the AI thing will keep you safe, you will get destroyed. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And one of those building blocks is understanding what the data is, the sensitivity level, the business context, right? We're talking earlier today about how the prompts and responses themselves are data, and every interaction with an agent has the ability to generate a new data artifact, which then needs to be classified. It has to be least privileged, and it has to be monitored. So those are kind of the three building blocks of knowing what it is, knowing what can be done, and who and what can do things to it. Yeah. And then
but all dynamic.
Is it doing
all dynamic?
All dynamic.
Because the data is like, there's a reason they call it Gen AI. It generates, right? So the data is new all the time. All the time. Every time you ask a question, you get something back, and it's new data. It's not just an aggregation of the old data, because it's like a kid in high school that writes an essay. They read a bunch of things, but they generate something new.
Yeah.
This is what this is doing, and it's doing it at machine speed. Yeah. At machine speed.
And don't forget, you need to make, if you're not making sure, you will have extremely valuable data, that some of it is information, that some of it can be extremely inaccurate if you will have the wrong intent, completely outside of policy.
Yeah.
And so also the policy need to be dynamic. We're always talking about right sizing permissions and make sure the right identity can access the right data. It's the holy grail. So the whole traditional identity and access management, that you can provision an identity, human or non-human, that's going to access a system, it's the efficiency of it is so minor. You know, and this is not. It's not going. You know, it's just inch deep in this ocean.
Yeah.
You really need to make sure that the identity and these AIs can access only the data they should access. And the other thing is you need AI detection and response. You need to make sure what is happening. You know, and whether agent at 2 a.m. access 10,000 HR records, you need to know about it. Or starting to send information. Or, you know, going to remove controls in order to get access to information. Or deciding to store information in a different place that have a lot of critical PII. And all of it that is creating in a machine speed need to be detected and protected in machine speed.
Yeah, and you know, you talked about like the weather forecasting agent. How do you know that an agent is a weather forecasting agent, right? You have the name, you have who created the agent. If it's in some sort of registry like Azure Foundry or Bedrock or wherever you, Copilot Studio, wherever you create it, it's who created it. It's the system prompt, which is kind of the configuration, right? Like it's the default instruction of what the agent's supposed to do. So you can analyze that and then say, hey, you have a weather forecasting agent. You have a sales modeling agent, you have an Ask HR agent. But then in order to know whether they've gone off task, and the weather forecasting agent is now deep in your, you know, code repositories searching for secrets, you have to look at the actual what it's doing, right? So that's the kind of real-time
Yeah, that's why
intel.
we like the way I think about this is it's an AI control plane, okay?
Yeah.
And the difference between you know, like we also kind of dabble in governance because it's always the beginning of the process. But the way I think about it is a governance system documents intent. I mean, what's a governance system? You want to develop something. I'm the AI governance committee. You go, you file a request, you document, you say what it is, okay? And the governance process documents it. But that's all it does, okay? At the end of the day, you need a control plane that enforces intent, okay? So the governance system documents intent, and then somebody needs to make sure it stays within those boundaries. Those are the guardrails. That's what it keeps doing. It didn't start, seeding clouds to make rain instead of forecasting rain. You know, that's the control plane. And the control plane, it's not 100% only security, because there's the security piece, but again, because AI is so so much more, it's also like safety. Yaki talked about this a little bit, but this thing can make things up. Okay, it can make things up. It can do damage. So there's safety, but that enforcement layer is that control plane.
There is this sentence I borrowed from you that you need brakes in a car in order to drive fast.
Yeah.
And this is what you need here. You need to make sure that you have the controls in place in order to make sure you can really accelerate and move fast, and take corners in the right way.
Yeah.
And this is what we are just talking about. Between this agentic and the data, you need to make sure that you have this controller that is very dynamic, extremely intelligent, have a lot of coverage and completely automatic in order to solve it. Because what I see that organizations many times miss is the velocity, the speed of this technology in order to make sure that it will be valuable.
Yeah, and you mentioned dynamic. I think, we have a red teaming solution for AI, right? Because you can't know whether an AI is vulnerable just by looking at configs. That's part of it, the posture management piece. But you have to dynamically test this. And Ron, maybe you could talk about the importance of knowing the underlying data in the red teaming exercise versus just generically firing away like prompt injection attacks or trying to do a generic jailbreaks.
I mean, it's pretty simple. You look at any of these frameworks like OWASP or MITRE, there's always a data leakage category.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I want to test, you're the AI agent, I want to test a data leakage category. What am I going to do? Okay, so I can start asking you questions like, give me 5 phone numbers. Okay, great. If you're a good AI system, you probably have guardrails around that, and you won't give it to me. But even if you give it to me, how do I know it's? Maybe you made it up. Okay, I can make up 5 phone numbers. I'm sure an AI can make up 5 phone numbers. So the only way that I can figure out whether I have a true data leakage issue is if I know something about the data. So if I know that you were trained on that data, I know what I want to extract from you. If I don't know, then I don't even know what to extract. I'll get something back, but I won't know, is it a data leakage issue or a hallucination issue? So my entire red team exercise, it's kind of like, I think this is true, by the way, for all pen testing. Okay, you can get a pen tester, not just AI. You can get a pen test that is utterly worthless, okay, and you just check the box, or you can get a really good pen testing team. The only way to do really good AI red teaming is by understanding what happens behind the scenes. And it's we think of it as like the difference between phishing and spear phishing, right? In spear phishing, somebody goes, they read up on you, they try to research you, and then they know what will trigger you. The only way to do this is by understanding the thing behind it, which is the data.
Yeah. And, Yaki, you mentioned about IAM not being really the answer. I think when the agentic wave started to hit, everyone looked at authorization as the answer, right? Oh, if we just know what the agents can access, we'll be able to control them. We'll be able to right size it. They won't go off any rails. They won't be able to read data that we don't want them to read and then surface to a user who shouldn't have access to it. But just knowing whether an agent is got a specific role or entitlement, maybe that it can access Salesforce, is not enough. You have to know, when it accesses Salesforce, does it have access to opportunity records? Within an opportunity record, can it look at the ARR of the opportunity? So you need data level visibility and a way to in real time right size the access, almost per call, right? And so I don't understand how IAM is going to really provide that kind of answer in this more dynamic world.
It's just basic authorization. Like IAM could not help you with just granular access to data elements. Here it's all over. And also with the overall authorization, there are just so much room to do mistakes. I can, on my own identity, just just have 10 different agents. So it's something that you must do. But it will not help you from any data loss, data breaches, or creating or storing data in places you don't want to do it. There is no understanding of the data. And if you really think about this technology and what LLM needs, they needs data more than anything else.
Yeah.
I think you do need the you can't you need an authorization layer. Okay, you need
sure,
it.
Yeah.
The thing is, you need an authorization layer that is a data authorization layer.
Right.
You need it to be like singular. This was always my big problem with database security. Wasn't the the classification or the audit. It was the entitlements, because every freaking database had its own language for creating grants and revokes and then you have 80 databases. Okay. So what am I going to do? So now it's even worse, because we have more databases and we have all these and we have apps, and so we need an authorization layer, but we need one that can address all the data. Otherwise, you won't be able to define anything in the agent. It has to be dynamic enough, okay? Because people are going through the same steps as every other technology, okay? They start with very, very broad privileges, because I'm building an agent. I promised you it'll be ready in a week, and I have a bug, and I keep getting a permission issues. You know what? I'll just open it up for now. I'll close down later. Then they don't close it, okay? Then you go into like a creator mode, okay? Meaning the privileges come with whoever created the agent, because that's easy. I can explain it to you. Then it goes into on behalf of. Okay, so no, you can't use it because it's like a service account. No, when I use it, it'll use my privileges. When Yaki uses it, it'll be his privileges. Okay, but I have too many privileges. You're an agent. You can do so many things. I should trust you less than I trust myself. Okay, what I really want is I want something that understands what I asked you to do and then limit it to exactly those privileges. How are you going to do that if you don't understand the 100 places data lives and adjust it using each one of these different methods? So an IAM is like this course, okay? You can't be this course. You need to be, I need to give this, and this.
You need to be extremely specific and granular, and this is something that is very hard to do, and you need to right-size it if you have issues, and you need to understand abnormal behavior. So obviously, you need some kind of a registry and authorization, and you need to manage identities. But if you want to protect your data from AI, IAM will not help you.
Atlas. This product has, I think, 8 different modules covering the entire AI lifecycle. Tell me why it's so important to have a solution that can actually cover everything under the sun when it comes to AI, not just an SPM tool that gives you basic visibility and maybe another tool for the governance piece. Why did you build it in such a unified way? What was the thought process there?
I think, I make a lot of mistakes, but I try not to make the same mistake twice. And what I've learned over my career is that we as people who build things, we never think how hard it is for like the consumer of our technologies to actually take them and use them. We think it's like we get used to our technology and we think it's easy. So and I was always plagued with how do I make it easier? How does it go faster? So when I started building or thinking of, what will it take for people to be able to move into AI safely, when you go in it, you say, okay, it's classic things. You need to be able to discover things. You need to create an inventory. You need to do assessments. You need to pen test it. You need to do all these things. You need to put the runtime controls. Then some auditor's going to knock you on the head and say, where's my report? It's all doable. Okay, it's all doable. You can go and get these 8 tools. But if you think about the difficulty, it's just a lot to ask for someone to do. And then you add to that the fact that AI is very heterogeneous. Like these vendors, like OpenAI was everything, and then Gemini was better, and then Anthropic was this, and then Microsoft issues 4 different technologies a day, and it's a lot. Okay, and if you're a bigger company, you don't pick one. You have 8 of them. Okay, so what is the complexity that we're asking someone to do? And it's just too much. And so we said, no, it has to be simple. It has to be something that will take you through this cycle, and we'll just give you the answers and not just, I have an integration project. It'll take me 9 months. Plus, I probably don't even have the skill sets. Where am I going to get, if I have 8 tools, where am I going to get 8 or 12 AI security experts? Where am I going to do that? So it had to be one platform through the whole life cycle, very, very heterogeneous. Okay, and that's where it came from. It came from thinking of what is a day in a life of a customer going to look like.
Yeah, and very automated too, right? All of the discovery. Once you connect a data source like AWS, it's scanning the entire AWS org and surfacing every day because things are changing every minute. What's new, right? What are the new AI popping up?
So, Rob, it's going back to what we understand is that if you're going today to a mid-size enterprise, if you don't have a platform, it will never work.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't have this sprawl of so many tools that you need to manage that are not talking to each other, that you need to look at one thing here and the other thing is there, and you will also never going to get to outcomes because you don't see the problem end to end. And this is what we have done with data to make sure, security, you don't have a data breach, compliance, make sure that you can, classify everything, do everything automatically, show that you are doing a good job on any data store in the world. And this is here. It was when we look at several companies, we just understood how people will be able to consume it. So, and we are maniacally outcome driven. And you want to make sure that you can solve a problem end to end. If you are a data security platform, you need to make sure that you are doing everything. If you are an AI security platform, you need to make sure that you're doing everything. If you are AI and data security platform, you need to make sure that you're controlling the use cases end to end. And when we look at it, we understood that the adoption that organizations, the catalyst for the adoption for organization is data and AI, and you need to make sure that it's a complete platform. So from all the companies that we look at, it made sense to move with AllTrue at the time because it was the most comprehensive. And the other thing it was, and we have the models and whatever we'll do, all the find fix alert we can do for every data store in the world and enrich it with identity and so forth. Ron and the team were thinking about it for AI. Whatever model, whatever will come, you can do it very rapidly. And you have this foundation for a world that's moving very fast. As Ron said, that the foundation, the controls should be, constant. You can't build something that you constantly need to change in order to, when you are running after this rabbit. The same thing that you are doing with data. So this is something that we saw. You can't use case here, use case there. It will not work. You need a platform. You need to make sure that everything is very comprehensive and you can really solve problems fast and automatically.
Yeah, I feel like with the acquisition of AllTrue, we really changed the DNA of the company from protecting the world's information to securing AI and the data that powers it, right? And now that you have two sides of the coin and it's talking to each other, and like we talked about before, the AI security layer can't function without the data intelligence.
But there is another missing part, which is one of the most important in security, that adversaries are using AI without guardrails and super fast. So what you see today, if we now going to dissect 100 of the last big breaches, I will bet my pinky and your thumb that malware wasn't installed on the machine. That what happened was phishing, and most of the time spear phishing, or more broadly social engineering, that someone is trying to take an identity, a session token, and start to do a lot of damage. This is usually the way that it works. And all the vibe coding in order to make sure that you can do all the reconnaissance, understand who you are, what application you are using, and then really do this very sophisticated supply chain attacks. It's something that you really need very sophisticated AI that is extremely accurate to understand it, to understand the abnormal behavior, to understand if it's phishing, to look at the payload. So we also, we have this unbelievable sandbox of with SlashNext, the company that we bought for phishing and spear phishing and any social engineering, the best detection in the world to make sure that adversaries can take identity and can get in. And this is something we saw with our MDDR service. We are saving the bacon of dozens of organizations on a weekly basis. And many times, and most of the times we find it on the identity layer, just bad actors can never touch the data. But when we analyzed it, you've been with us in the process, we said, for the love of God, how they get in. And it always was through business email compromise, someone, some LinkedIn that someone is sending someone WhatsApp messages, whatever it is. And, it always happens that bad actors can get get credentials. And then we saw the level of sophistication that came with generative AI. And we have these multi-layer models that using this unbelievable sandbox that SlashNext built with computer vision and NLP to build this unbelievable detection. So this is something that you must pay a lot of attention, because the bad actors becoming much, much, much better because of generative AI, and they don't have any problems. No guardrails, no adoption problem, no policy,
no legal team,
compliance. They just,
yeah,
striving to get to outcomes. So you need to be ahead of it.
Yeah, when we were looking at that, we were looking at these incidents where, it was successful social engineering attack after another. It just companies that had 2 or 3 email security products looking at these messages, looking at the sender, looking at the links, and yet was flagging them as safe.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time because it came from a trusted source,
yeah.
Right? You have a bank that can have 10,000 vendors. 1,000 of them are, like you say, like 2 people and a dog.
Yeah.
Their security stack isn't very good. They get compromised, and now you're getting
They're
malicious
getting compromised,
emails.
and the bad actor is sitting on the conversation for 3-4 months, and everything looks from a trusted domain. They following the right behavior. I sent you a Google form. Please just log into my system. You need to update something, and this is how it works. So except of you need to protect your data, you need to protect your tools and pipelines. You need to make sure that the right data is in the hands of the right agents. You need to understand the behavior of these identities, but also you need to understand how adversaries will come from outside and will try to get into your organization. So we just look at it and look at the problems, and you always remember what we try to promise, what we are promising CISOs when we meet them. If you will deploy us, if you will have a full deployment on Varonis, on your data source, on your identity repositories, and so forth, most probably you will never have a data breach. God forbid you will have a data breach. With the right size permissions, the potential damage will be very small, and in the second there is abnormal behavior, we'll stop it, and then we'll give you high quality forensics. We'll tell you exactly what happens, and then we're really going to cap the liability and understand what's going on. And this is also something that is very, very important these days.
Back to the phishing emails. We found that when these malicious emails were slipping through, one of the main reasons was, like you said, trusted source. They were sitting and watching, right? And then let's say your lawyer gets compromised. They use these Gen AI tools to then do all the recon in seconds of that lawyer and craft an email to you from him that is perfectly in his voice, and it has all the context of all your communication because it's reading the inbox. And then a lot of email tools would actually look at that trusted source as a green flag to say, oh, this is from Joe. You have a million conversations with Joe. This is probably good. And by the way, the link that Joe sent you is to google.com. It's a Google form.
Yeah.
Trusted. Okay, green. What I love about Interceptor is it trusts nothing. It's a zero trust concept.
Yeah.
So every link, every attachment gets loaded in the sandbox and it gets tested. Just like as if a user was clicking through and filling out the form, using computer vision, using different modes of AI to detect something that could be subtly off, and that is I think what
also
sets
don't
them
forget,
apart.
in order to make sure that you have these detection rates, you need to make sure that you're unbelievably accurate.
Yeah.
And this technology is just magic.
So Yaki, Ron, thanks for joining me today. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.